You've never seen a show like this.
Welcome to the Free World Show. I got my boy Stas in the house. Stas, please introduce yourself.
Well, first of all, thank you for having me. My name is Stas. The actual name is much longer, but
Give it to us.
Stanislav Lukashevich.
Okay. I can't say that, but
Yeah, exactly. That's why.
just-
So Stas is short for Stanislav. And I'm a writer.
tell me where you come from.
Well, that's a broad question, right?
So writing, what got you into it? I've known you for quite some time. You're actually a really good friend of mine, one of my best friends in my whole life. And you came to California. This is your first time here. What has your experience been so far? Tell me about just the first 24 hours in California, and we'll dive into everything else. But first, welcome to California. Thank you for being here.
Well, honestly, I kind of came here with no expectation. I wanted to see you. I wanted to see Cali. It's also a part of the writing journey itself because this is my first time traveling to a new place almost in 3 years.
Okay.
While before that, I've traveled a lot my entire life, and kind of the past 2 years has been very stagnant
Okay.
in that sense. And so there are multiple reasons for coming, and one of the reasons for coming here is kind of break that streak of just sitting in Dallas and writing. That's what I've been doing.
Right. Okay, so right. That's what you do.
Yeah.
So you're coming from Dallas, and what got you started on this writing journey? And I knew you for quite some time, so you weren't always writing. So when did you decide that it was like, hey, I'm gonna pursue this? When this is my passion? When was that moment you're like, I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna write. I'm gonna be a writer.
Yes. So the story goes like this, and I'm so glad we're in the podcast and I have actual time to tell the story.
Yes, please.
Because it's not a short one, right? But first of all, I've always wanted to write a book. Even when I was, 10 years ago, I always wanted to write a book. Since I can remember myself, I never knew what that's going to be. And when I was in school, I thought it's going to be business or, econ, something like that. Well, life goes on, things change, right? And there was a period in my life that coincided with COVID.
Okay.
When I started having a lot of dreams. So there was, a moment when my life, when a lot of things have changed and I started having a lot of dreams. So what I started doing is I started to write them down. So as soon as I would wake up, I would write the dream down. Sometimes I would even schedule my alarm 5 to 10 to 20 minutes before my usual wake up time, so I could still be in the REM sleep and the deep sleep. Yes.
Okay.
Yes, and record and write down the dream because I would still be in that state until it fades 5 minutes later. So I would record these dreams, and with time over the year, I've accumulated almost 100 pages of those dreams.
Wow.
Yes. So I would have, it's so crazy because usually people are like, oh, I don't remember my dreams. And, when I was a kid, I had the dream here, a dream there, you would remember some of the dreams. 2020 was so crazy. Like I would have a dream almost every day that I could remember. I would wake up and I would write it down. Well, at some point, I would give my friends, my family to read them. I was like, this is what I had. And they all had the same reaction. This is crazy. You should write. There's a story in each dream, and all of them connected. So that was at the time. That was at the time when I was just starting to discover like psychology, the works of Freud, Adler, Jung, and all that. I'm still kind of learning that slowly over time. But that's how I started to write. So what kind of triggered the creativity were the dreams. Now, my first book, when I remember this moment, It was April 6, 2021. I was in Kyiv at the time. It was 4 a.m. and I couldn't fall asleep. Just laying in bed, and for whatever reason, and I just, it wasn't anxiety or anything. It was just I couldn't fall asleep. And I would start daydreaming, but in bed, kind of like I started having these images. And at some point, I remember I said, like, fuck it, let me just start writing the scene, because people tell me, like, you should write a book. I was thinking
Kind of
writing
just came to you.
Yes, it like kind of came to me.
And so you had like 1 full year of writing your dreams down almost
Yes.
every time you dream, like documenting your dreams. You have a dream log working. Then you're conscious. You should be sleeping, but you're conscious and you're receiving some sort of ideas, and you start to write this down.
Yes.
Very cool. Very cool.
So I would start daydreaming. I'm not gonna say what I saw, I wasn't asleep, right? But I saw some images. I was like, okay, let me write that down. And so I wrote at the time what I thought was the first chapter of my first novel, which I finished in a year and a half since that day. So I finished my first novel in December 2022.
Beautiful. And I mean, do you want to talk about the name of that? Is that something you're still working through? You got one novel down. I know you've been working on a lot of things. So tell me about that writing journey. And so you have your inspiration, why you're doing it. What's beautiful about that experience is you shared something. You weren't thinking about becoming a writer. And the people who gave you feedback were like, you should write. Like, this is amazing. That's beautiful. And you've almost like come to this conclusion, like you're pursuing something in your being, like your conscious, your subconscious, and people were like, you should keep doing this. That's beautiful.
Yes. Again, what was the question?
So the question, I'm just saying, damn, bro, I remember trying to get people to care about what I cared about. They're like, no, dude, that's amazing. That's like a really good story. It's like supply and demand. It's like, I'm a writer because the economics have determined it so. But like, no, my question here is what's next for the writing? So you have this novel, right? And what kind of genre is this writing in? So you've got obviously something you're working with, but what is the sort of plot, storyline? What can you say about it?
So let's back up a little bit. I finished the story in 2022 when I was in the US. I wrote it originally in my native language, which we're going to dive into that topic a little bit in a bit.
Okay.
It's a separate topic. But I finished my novel, and I was kind of writing it almost in isolation. So it took me like 2 years almost to write it. And at that time, I did not know about how vast the industry is. I still think that a lot of people had this big misconception about the industry and the writing as a craft, as a profession in general. At the time, even though, the stats go less than 1% of people write books, and less than 5% of people who start writing a book actually finish one. So I did not know about that. And I did finish my novel. It's only then in 2023 when I discovered that there's a huge community of writers. And I've been blessed to live in a city in like Dallas, DFW area where there is still a big professional writers workshop that's been around since 1970s. And I met the writers for the first time. I was kind of nervous, but I joined the community, and I've been a part of that community since, because every week we meet for reading critique. But back to the book question. So at the time, I thought that I wrote my debut novel. Well, everyone thinks, oh my God, they're writing a bestseller, they're writing this debut novel, until they actually share the writing and they realize, there's a lot to learn, because it's an actual craft, right? It's not just writing down your thoughts or journal. It's an art, it's a skill. It takes years and decades to sharpen the craft of writing. And that's when I realized, oh, I'm not ready to, because it's not my best work. Because
What was that feedback like? So you make something, you finish a book.
Yeah.
I mean, how did that, first and foremost, how did it feel when you finished the novel? You're like, I'm done with this. I think this, what were your thoughts about it?
Well, I wasn't satisfied.
Okay.
That's number one thing. And ironically, again, I'm writing fantasy, it's fiction. There's plot and all that's, we'll tell the story in a bit, right? But one of the themes and one of the messages kind of that were driving the characters and the overall theme of the novel was that kind of this old Buddhist idea that achievements lead to nothing, right? And not just the achievements leading to nothing, but it's more of like, be careful what you wish for, right? There's almost like a line there that's not this exact line because everyone knows this line, but it's kind of one of the leading themes of the book because the characters in the book, they wish for something at the beginning of the book that is subtle, that is not the main plot. That's not like, I wish for this, but they were looking for something. They want something at the beginning of the book. And by the end of the book, they each get what they want, even as a result of the entire story, or just temporarily for a couple of chapters. And it shows them how naive they were in a way, that they would receive what they want, but it's not the way they wanted it. And it's interesting that there are two characters pretty much and two POVs. It's a multi-POV novel. And each of them gets what they want, and each of them ends up kind of wanting almost like just breadcrumbs of what the other wanted at the beginning. So I'm not sure, because there was still a draft, it was still a different language. I'm still revamping the entire trilogy because it's a big story. And it's ironic because I discovered that my first book that I wrote, as it is of right now, it's going to be a second book in the series because right now I'm writing my second book, which is going to be my debut, the first book with a serious potential.
Okay.
Because part of your question was, well, kind of what is the book and what is the story right now? Again, it's still being crafted. So I've been writing, this is my 6th year of writing the story. I'm taking my time. And I've hit multiple writing conferences. And what happens at the writing conferences is writers get together, both professionals, both published authors and novices, and just people who just want to start out and want to learn how to write. There are classes, there are keynotes, there's community there. But one big aspect of the writing conferences are agents.
Okay.
And that's a whole new level of understanding the industry, because what I thought was everyone knows J.K. Rowling, right? Almost everyone knows this story. It's like, oh, she was rejected by 13 publishers. Well, now, and I had the same impression. I was like, okay, well, when I finished my story, I edited it, I polished it, and I sent it directly to the publisher, to the editors. That's not how it works nowadays.
Okay. How does it work? Yeah.
So I don't know what changed. I may be a little bit uneducated in that sense, but I can tell you what the reality is for me and for most of writers at the workshop right now. So as of 2026, if you want to go the traditional publishing route, right, you have to have a literally agent, because there are two routes. There's one being the traditional publishing, which is, you have an agent, you have an editor, you sign a contract with a publisher, and then they publish the book for you, they distribute it for you, they put you in the bookstores, etc. The second route is self-publishing. So, and self-publishing gives you much more freedom in your writing, in publishing itself, in presenting the book, but there's less quality books in the self-publishing space. There are exceptions. There are stories, like, for example, Red Rising, I believe. there are exceptions when writers self-publish, and then the book gets picked up by a publisher, and then re-sign the contract, and they become a traditionally published author as well. But those are exceptions.
Right. It's not a lot of self-publishing
Yes.
gets to that level.
Especially in art, so especially in fiction.
Fiction. So yeah,
Right.
what is it? I mean, coming from writing your dreams is almost feels like fiction, right? Or it's so unreal. Dreams as a whole. We could talk about that for 3 hours, but what made you go? Is it because of the dreams that you had that led you to writing fiction, or what is the appeal of fiction to you? And I also want to ask, nobody goes 6 years, you know what I mean? Like, not everybody can do that. Like, some people tell them they're good at something, and they write their first draft, it doesn't go how they thought, and they give up. So I really want to like almost dive into that now, but we can get into the fiction. But like, how did you break through those first, not necessarily failures, but like those, that valley of despair? You have this passion, people give you some good feedback, you start writing, people are probably like, you know what, this kind of sucks, right? Or this isn't good, it's not good enough. Like, how did you take that feedback and continue? So you're 6 years in now. What is driving that? And how can other authors or writers or anybody who has a passion, like, what advice can you give them to push through and keep going? Like, what has been driving you to move that way?
Yeah, so you have multiple questions in there.
Yes.
So I'll go step by step, and please, if I deviate, please remind me and keep me
No
on
worries.
track.
No rules
Yes.
here in the free world, baby.
In the free world. So why fiction? At the time, I didn't really think much about that. Originally, as I've said, many, many years ago, before I started writing, I thought I'm going to write a business book because I wanted to be an entrepreneur. You remember, I had a company, I had a business, I had a label brand. But as time went on, things change. And when I started writing fantasy, I did not really much think about it, because I thought, well, if I write nonfiction, right? If I write a, not a memoir, but something of value to the people, like in business, right? This is my journey. This is what worked. This is what you can use. I realized I don't have much experience in that yet, because I'm still young.
Right.
And at the same time, not just experience, but also any type of success, right? Whatever that may, be
not
for
like an
other
expert.
people.
You might
for
have
other-
had success,
Yes.
and how you define
Yeah,
success,
yeah.
but
So-
not an expert level where
Yes.
someone's going to buy your book because you've been doing it for 10 years.
Exactly.
You were like
Exactly.
1, 2, 3 years into it.
I've learned a lot of things that I may even sell to other people, like knowledge, some of the hacks for content, all that. But when it comes to fantasy and writing fiction, I did not think about it because it felt so natural after writing dreams. And again, given I did not write my book just based on my dreams, it was just the trigger, right? I still had to imagine new things when I'm brand awake, Why fiction? And as time went on, I realized, and I learned more psychology, I gained more experience, I wrote more, almost 1,000 pages. I realized something. I realized that fiction is kind of looking almost as, let me rephrase that. Fiction is almost like looking in the mirror, right? So why do people look in the mirror? To take a better look at themselves, right? But in case with literature, it's not the appearance that you're looking at, but your own soul, both from reader's perspective and from writing. So that's what I think now, that literature and reading and writing it's made up, because there can be an argument made, well, it's fiction, it's imaginative, right? Who cares? Like, it's not real. But the power that comes in with writing something that's not real, the freedom which you can write there, and you can say, well, it's not real, right? But the messages and the themes and layers you can intertwine there, I think you have much more leeway than writing nonfiction, because nonfiction, you know, even like doesn't matter business, philosophy, memoir, whatever, people will be able to judge, and it's less of an art. Because, well, it's a story, you know, storytelling is an art, but the contents of the story itself, you know, because they're real, they're not judged as art. You know, some people may claim life is an art. I'm not diving into that, right?
Right.
But fiction is an art. It's a craft, right? It's making other people feel something. And since I was a kid, I remember this moment. I was young. I was still in Kyiv in Ukraine when I was a kid. And I remember this moment of realization that you are never going to package your experience, your feelings, and your knowledge with 100% accuracy to share it with another person. For example, we may talk right now. Right now we're talking. I say something and you interpret it in a different way, in your own way, right? We may have an experience, or we may had an experience that's similar. But even if with the power of words, it's almost impossible to articulate the thoughts and feelings that the other person gets the exact same perception you had.
Right.
That thought, that realization when I was a child blew my mind. And ever since then and till this day, when I, you know, feel strong feelings or I have an epiphany or an insight, you know, I get excited or I feel sadness, doesn't matter what emotion that is. Part of my brain always goes, how can I articulate that in words or in writing so it can be shared with maximum accuracy? But on the contrary, ironically, what happened in my writing journey, as I learned from published authors, from veterans who've been there for decades, I learned to respect the reader. And the way you respect the reader is that you give some freedom of imagination. And it's not about the accuracy of information. It's not about the accuracy and, you know, being very detailed and controlling about how you deliver, you know, the feelings or the information, but just have some breadcrumbs, right? And respecting the reader and making the reader enjoy, some may say to entertain, right? Because there's always this big debate. Are you writing for yourself or are you writing about the reader, right? There's always this kind of like tug of war. There's a balance to be found in the craft because, yes,
you could apply that to music, business.
Yes.
Are you creating the product for something you want to buy, or are you creating it for people you think, you know, want to buy? And then fiction too is like, nonfiction is mostly backward looking, right? Where it's like, well, if historical, you know, it has to have happened. Nonfiction is something that's like, it has to have happened. That's the only way we can prove it. But fiction can be taking this, but it could be forward looking. Like you said, like you can almost explore things that are true in not real characters, but you can explore a more real experience. You can more comfortably express your own feelings through the fiction. It's almost like wearing a mask, you know, or having a, you know, a profile where without your name and face attached to it. It's like, that's really beautiful. I've never thought about fiction as being a way to explore more real concepts than what we currently talk about or have been discussed. Like that in and of itself, I think should give people a reason to explore the possibilities of fiction. If you want to learn more about yourself, people think, why would I read a made up story? Well, maybe there are things that you are feeling that you would never be able to explore through stuff you know. And you can only access that part of yourself by exploring it through these characters that are so unreal. You're like, there's no way this could be real, right? And then boom, you get hit with some shit that you feel like. That's amazing. I haven't thought about it like that. I loved fiction growing up. I listened to a lot of just nonfiction or business or whatever, but like that in and of itself, I think is a reason for people to think more about fiction. People who want to learn more about themselves, like exploring it through fiction. That's amazing. I've never heard anyone say that. It makes me think that. So
yeah, it's all a metaphor, right, for life. Story is a metaphor for life. We can go deep into the rabbit hole of myths, right, and how we always had myths, next to a fire in the caves, and
dragons
and all that stuff.
gods
so,
and
yeah, we can talk about that. I don't think because there are people who are much more knowledgeable in myths than I am, so I'm not going to talk about that. But understanding self, right? Understanding other people, and this is, you don't have to be a writer to learn empathy from fiction, from literature. I actually don't like, so let me finish that thought. You don't have to be a writer to appreciate literature and develop empathy. I think a lot of readers can attest to that. People in book talk, can definitely attest to that. I think that writing is even a deeper dive. And at least for me, right? I'm not talking because every writer is different, right? I'm talking about myself. When I write and then some time goes by, or even in the moment, sometimes it's hard because, once you develop consciousness, right? Once you develop understanding and awareness of self, and realize, these characters are a metaphor. Where is this coming from? Because that was your question. Where is this coming from? No matter with the character, no matter the story, it's almost as if, I'm writing a part of self, right? Every writer puts a part of themselves into a character, into a story, into multiple characters. And so sometimes it's even like, I would say it's hard, right? Because, you may write something dark, and it is, and, we can get into the questions of morals and all that stuff, but it's made up. That's the beauty of it, right? Because it's a metaphor, right? What you're trying to say. I don't remember who said that, but the writer's job is to not answer questions, but to ask questions, right? And one of the beautiful things is how readers can relate to a character and connect to the writer through the character and realize I'm not alone.
Right.
Because a lot of times, like in nonfiction or in business books, history books, philosophy books, there's this like reality that's hanging on you, right? And you have to deliver the value and everything. But in fiction, it's through the metaphor and the enjoyment.
What is your favorite question that you've asked the readers through fiction in your writing?
That's a good question.
I should be a writer.
Yes, that's a good question. Well, there are so many. So there are so many that are intrinsic. So my second novel, which is I hope is going to be a debut novel or not. We'll see. You never know, right? I may write another 10 books before I'm published, but I'm still asking these questions to myself when I'm writing right now because the novel isn't done. But so I will look through the first book. One of the questions I did ask is how. So people have wishes, right? Mm-hmm. People have desires. People have something that they want. The question I ask is, can you get what you want without paying for it right now? So
without sacrifice.
So yeah, so I would say I didn't articulate the question because the moment you start articulating the question that is rational, you start thinking and not feeling, right? And so it's only in retrospect, which you finish the chapter, you finish the novel, then you can look back and say, well, this is what I wrote. This is the question that I intrinsically asked, implicitly. And I think Stephen King said that a novel should never start with a theme. It should develop into one.
Okay.
Right. So, and I felt that, and it's only in retrospect. Right. And so one of the things I wrote about, because once you ask this question, you're kind of losing this magic. You're like, oh, you're activating the rational part of your brain, and you're getting into the philosophy of things. Right. It's kind of a dangerous thing to do, because you have to feel, you kind of, you don't ask questions. Stop asking these questions. And this is one of the best advice I got from veteran authors who already published. We have a guy, his name is Alex Lee Martinez. He published 13 novels or even more, wrote more than, I think, 20. And one of the advice he gave was just stop thinking about it. That's what was one of my biggest struggles, is kind of overthinking that.
Right.
Now, but in retrospective, one of the questions I ask is, what is the cost to wishes, right? Because the Buddhist desire is like, oh, well, the Buddhist idea, or maybe even Stoic idea, is like, okay, well, the desires and wishes are the root for suffering, right? And there is a part of truth to that. But I also discovered that if you don't have any wishes and desires,
what's the point?
Yeah. Right? And, kind of, it's the engine for life. Like, if you have no desires, no wishes, nothing that you want, well, then you're in one place, time is frozen and everything. And one of the things I discovered is that you pay for your wishes. If it's not money, you pay it with time. And it's kind of, I'm not going to spoil, but it is very important in the mechanics of the story and the magic that it works in fantasy.
Right. I'm going to get a little bit of water for us. All right, we re-upped on the necessities in life. Okay, so I was asking about what is writers, they don't answer questions, they ask questions. And through fiction, you can explore a lot of different questions. Your question was, can you get what you want without sacrificing or giving something up? What's the cost of getting what you want? And so, is there a struggle behind that you went through? Like, what has your struggle been as a writer, as an author, as a person that led you through this journey?
Well, there's a whole irony in this first novel. There's a high chance that it's never going to be published. But the irony is, I was writing about how nuanced wishes and desires are, and how you may get what you want, but it's not going to feel satisfying because you've learned so much. Because the person you've been years ago when you had that wish is no longer alive. You're a different person who went through a story. You learn things, you changed, and you realize that wish was your old self. And you did not know things. You may have been either naive or not knowledgeable, or you simply changed, right? And the whole idea behind that, I'm not going to go too deep into the characters and the plot, but the idea was that you are a different person when you made the wish, and you'll become a different person when you have that wish fulfilled.
Right.
And
the gap in time.
There's a gap in time
between wanting something and getting it.
Yes, and even
you change in that gap. And if you stick on that one thing, you get it, and all of a sudden it's like, now what? Or that wasn't enough. And that's like, so what was the thing that you felt like is the hardest part about writing? So maybe.
So let me finish that thought,
okay, keep
right?
going.
Because the thought was, well, that what the book turned out to be for me when I was writing it. That's the whole irony. That's the whole joke. because I wrote the book, I finished the book, and I did not feel satisfied because I knew it wouldn't be. Because I was like, why am I writing this, right? And I realized, oh, this may be not enough, right? Because, I want to develop, I want to grow. And I realized, oh, I couldn't do better. But I did finish it. And a lot of times, we should celebrate small victories, right?
Just finishing a novel is a small victory.
Small achievement, right? I mean, right? At the same time, that's what it felt to me. So I felt what my character felt. And that was the biggest kind of climatic experience of that writing moment, right?
And then in finishing it, it was almost anticlimactic. It's like you get to the end and it's like, I mean, you told me you didn't necessarily feel fully satisfied with that product. Anyways, but
I had experiences beyond writing that felt like it. I mean, they're personal, right? Because every person has a part of their world that they wish to keep private, right? But there were things that I've achieved that for me were a big deal.
Right. And in your 6 years, what are some of those success? I mean, the fact that you're still writing, you're still active in the community, you're here talking about it, you're on social media, you're posting, you've got some posts that have got like 600,000 plus views. It's going to be millions of views. Millions of people are seeing stuff that you've created and put together, whether it's social media content or it's related to what you're writing, or it's the vibe, the energy, the whole persona, like your whole mystique, the mysterious Stas. Like, yo, you want to talk to a human being like who's got some mystery to them? Like, sit down with Stas if you could catch him. But he's my friend, so I already know. But what has been what you've learned? Like, in your perspective, you finished a novel, didn't feel satisfied, but like, what success, what can you speak on that you've accomplished through these 6 years of writing?
So, a couple of things. I wouldn't consider myself successful until I'm published. Okay. That is just my obsession. You were asking me earlier why I'm right.
Okay, so
it's because I'm obsessed.
Okay.
Yeah, I want to write. I want to have a story that is finished from beginning to an end, that other people may get inspired by in a written physical form, that they can, have a physical book, read on their couch, and have that intimate experience when there's no one else in the room and they're just there on the couch reading the story. And if I have at least few people who are going to tell me, well, I read this when I was alone and I felt connected, I felt inspired, I felt understood, and I know what to do now, or I had an idea, that would mean that all of this wasn't in vain, because it's different when I read it at the workshop. Mm-hmm. And that's what I think we as writers don't realize this enough. And some of the people from the workshop maybe watch this video. What we don't think about, because the way the workshop works is you get into the room with random writers. You have a community, and we have a randomizer, and you put into a random room with different writers. And you get a 15-minute block to read whatever you want to read, whatever you wrote, a chapter, a scene, whatever. And other people have like a minute to critique your work and suggest feedback and possible improvements. What we never talk about is the fact that experience is different for readers. Now, reading it out loud makes the writing better, and the editing process is better because
it allows you to write better.
Yes,
the reflection. Receiving criticism, implementing feedback.
Yes.
Is streamlined through reading it out loud, but that's not how the end reader will experience it.
Exactly. So it's kind of a double-edged sword, and we're only on one edge, on one edge of it, because reading it out loud, you can see, oh, this sentence doesn't work. Oh my God, like I want to cross it out. Sometimes I read out loud and like, what? No, this, cross it over. Sometimes people react to things so differently from what I thought they would react to, if, for example, like in a chapter, I would make this, the most important thing, but they reacted to a totally different thing.
You said that earlier, even
Yes.
expressing yourself to people.
Yes, perception. That's the best. And that's one of the reasons I love the workshop so much. It's not even about the writing itself or improving your craft. It's so interesting what people react to. It's so interesting how they perceive. But we forget about the other part of it, is that there are readers who are, reading on the couch with a lamp on, and they're immersed into your world, and they are gonna react almost with certainty to the average reactions of the workshop, because the beauty of the workshop is that multiple different people have different personalities, different writing styles.
Right. And they read.
Yes.
Because they're writers.
Yes.
So they read all the time. They read their own stuff. They consume literature for a living.
Just by being there, yeah.
Yeah. So they're going to be a good sense of your end reader. But it's also...
Yes.
Go ahead.
But on the other end, sometimes I catch myself seeing that the readers, my alpha readers who are not writers, react to some of the stuff I write differently from the writers, because they're not professionals, right? We're just an end reader. And sometimes, and this is the beauty of it, when you have a lot of feedback, you can pick on what people react to, and you can see, oh, they all agree that, for example, this paragraph sucks, whatever, or they all like this line. Even if readers who are not writers agree with what I've heard at the workshop, then it's probably an average human perception that I should take very seriously,
right,
as a respect for the reader. But there are some stuff that different alpha readers, just my friends, or not friends, but just people who are in a good relationship with acquaintances, they read and they react differently. They see things differently.
That makes me think about music and music artists, because I'll watch interviews with, wildly successful music artists, and the songs that blow up for them, they're like, I don't like this song, and this is the one that went. Whereas like I could imagine writers, might be more critical than like on certain things, where it's like what artists like in their own work is not always what listeners like in their own work. And so if all the feedback is both readers and writers, and some people are going to like their least favorite work the most, it's almost like how did you through this 6-year process, this long process, get to the point where you could take all that feedback with a grain of salt and not have it affect you as a writer and your voice?
Great question. And I had that problem the first year or two at the workshop, where I would take things too close to heart. Now I have a sort of an emotional distance. Where
detached.
I'm detached. I value the feedback with its face value. I value each feedback because the way your perception works is not up to me, right? And if I want to improve my writing, I should take it or leave it, right? At the same time, and it's a struggle for many writers, including myself, I'm not going to lie. Sometimes I'm like, well, some people don't get what I write.
Like, why don't they like this shit I love? Like, why
yeah.
can't you guys just like what I made?
Yes.
Like,
And you're right. Sometimes it's like, I'm so unconfident in this chapter. And I'm so, like, sometimes like, this is a weak chapter and they love it. And I'm like, wow. And
why? What was it?
So
what am I missing?
So yes, exactly. So that's the reaction that I sometimes get. The way you have to develop skin, right? So sometimes, people are like, I don't get it. Or the worst part, they don't react at all.
Oh.
They're like, sometimes people are just like, they're not going to say anything in the room.
It's crickets.
Yeah, or just people, or an alpha reader, or a reader in general, like they read the book, it's like, I like the ships. Okay, well, that's okay. And I like the atmosphere. But some of the things are completely past. But there are some people, and they exist. There are a lot of people who are deep thinkers, and they do pick up on stuff that I intended to kind of breadcrumb. Well, it's interesting. It's all this endless question with human perception, right? And I think developing skin, developing grit, practicing reading out loud, overstepping yourself, kind of getting out of your own shell, helps a lot. So, and sometimes like writers and artists, we are getting too caught up in how other people perceive, right? To the point that the art loses its meaning, right? So it's always the question of balance, right? On one hand, well, if you're sharing your art with someone else, you probably better entertain the thought of how others perceive it, right? So you can be like, for example, showing your diary. No one shows their diary. Or some people are like, oh, read my diary.
Or maybe they put it into a fiction book.
Who knows, right? So on one end, you're writing a diary that you're not sharing with anyone. And that's for yourself, purely for yourself, or a journal, right? That's for yourself. On the other hand, people may make this mistake of writing for the reader only 100% and disregard what they want themselves. So it's on one hand, a product and a business. On the other hand, it's a diary or a journal.
Art and expression.
That's the spectrum.
Right. So when expression becomes a product for someone, you lose the expression, the originality of the expression, and you're creating something for the end goal.
Yes.
You're losing the art in that, and it becomes just a means to an end. So okay.
The key is to find harmony,
harmony,
and balance. The key is to find balance.
How do you find that in your life as an author now? And
I've just been experienced enough at this point where I know where I'm on the spectrum. Like, for example, I went too deep into my own shell, into my own journaling, but I shared with others. And I may probably, I should think about how others perceive it. Or on the other hand, like, with this chapter, I went too much into trying to please the reader. I should cut back and say, like, what do I want to write? Because readers can pick up on that. So yeah, just finding balance, and because there's always this endless war and endless debate, because there are some people who are like, well, you should write for yourself, only for yourself. Okay, go write a journal.
Yeah. You want to get published? Like,
yeah,
you might have to consider some more factors. Like, you might just have to. It's like, yeah, I want to, I want to run a business or whatever, or I want to be a music artist, or I want to be an athlete. It's like, okay, go shoot hoops, like go kick a soccer ball around. It's like, but at the end of the day, it's like it has to be air quote on good enough for it to like sustain itself.
Yeah, it's like finding an ikigai. If you have a business, right? Like you want to love the business, what you're doing, right?
But you need clients.
You need clients to like what you do. Right, and the product or the service, right? So it's always a balance, right? Sometimes you can feel overwhelmed about the fact trying to please the clients, and you lose yourself in that process. You become exhausted in that way. On the other hand, you become delusional about, this business was going to be liked by everyone while no one else likes it. So it's always a balance.
Right. First principles versus self-expression. Art and writing is a place where you have to balance those things, because people aren't necessarily going to buy based on a universally agreed to value proposition. Like what everything we're saying is like everybody's going to interpret it differently. Okay. Now I wanted to understand a little bit of what differentiates you from other writers, what differentiates your style, like through this process of balancing what the reader wants, maintaining your originality. What is Stas' style? Like, what does Stas bring to the table? If there's a bookshelf with all of your books published in there, what are people going to say that makes you different from other authors?
Well, it's a tricky question because it's a business question, right? And it's, again, balancing the art with business. I'm convinced you can do both, right? It just takes skill, it takes time to do that. I would say this, right? There are two parts to that answer, to that question, two answers to that question. One is I know that there's an interest in my book. In the conferences that I attended, I've consulted 12 agents in person, not just querying, in person. And all 12 agents were highly interested in the book. They want me to submit their novel to them when it's done. So that's how I know that the pitch is interesting for not just for the readers, but for the industry itself. They know they have a chance of selling that, but they haven't seen or read my writing, the agents, yet. The second answer is what I bring to the table. Well, the deepness of thought, but it's not enough by itself, because those who are interested in depth, they can go read philosophy, right? But this is fiction, this is fantasy, a little bit different. What I've been told at workshop consistently was that since I joined, even when my writing sucked, like, it wasn't the best. It was just starting out. I
didn't suck.
I didn't suck at all, but there are like important basics that I did not understand, and there are a lot of mistakes I made. But they all tell me that the atmosphere and the mood is number one. That it's not just world building because it's fantasy, but they get immersed. And to me, it's the most important part, right? So I'm not really worried about that. The second thing, I was told that it's intriguing, and the intrigue helps a lot, right? There are niche debates within the writing community to what extent intrigue in itself can carry the book forward and the story in the reader's interest. There are so many things. There are so many techniques. There are so many important aspects to a fiction novel that there are hundreds of them, and we probably don't have time to go through each of them. But that's how I know that there is a feedback from the external world. I'm not just in my head, that people are interested, people react well. I still have a lot of things to learn. I'm just starting out, even though this is I've been writing, consistently fiction novels for 6 years. I still realize it's a lifetime journey. And so I'm not, I'm not worried that I may lose the reader at some point because I'm only becoming better. I'm just being patient.
What I was thinking when you said mood, atmosphere, intrigue, I went back to, you started writing fiction because of the dreams you had. So being able to, like, dreams and mood, atmosphere, like, that's deep rooted subconscious. We don't understand why we dream the things we do. We write down it and we try to, like, extrapolate from our own subconscious through dreams what we're really feeling. But that's amazing. You started out writing your dreams, like a dream journal, and the ability to create moods and atmospheres through that. Like, I'm seeing that. I haven't read, I don't know what the agents are reading, I haven't been to the workshops, but just the fact that you could take your dreams, turn them into stories, and then start accessing that while you're awake and conscious and building that skill. I mean, it's like coming out of a dream. So I think that could be something where that intrigue is coming from. There's something deep rooted subconsciously in the way you write that you can unlock some of that, because that's how you started. So I think it's cool.
And again, I'm not going to claim that I'm an expert. I'm not going to claim that I know what I'm doing, because I don't.
Nobody knows what they're doing, bro. Nobody knows.
It's like, I remember there was a panel with George R. R. Martin, the author who wrote Game of Thrones, The Song of Ice and Fire, and with Stephen King. Everyone knows Stephen King. And I don't remember who said, but I think George was Well, I talked to J.K. Rowling and she said, well, no one knows what they're doing with their writing because like it's not until it's finished, you don't know what you're doing. It's in the revision. When you go back to the beginning and read the story, you understand what's it really about and you revise it and you edit it in a way that it's a complete story.
So how do you know for your own writings when something is done?
That's what I usually ask, you know, the published authors, the veterans, what I call them. I think I've never had that feeling because even when I wrote my first book, that novel I knew it's not finished because I knew it's like a saga. It was a trilogy, and I knew it wasn't finished, right? So I don't have that feeling yet, and I may never get it. Just like Tolkien or other writers, they can just go back and, re-edit or put some things and, republish or. But to me, I imagine, and again, I can be completely wrong, it's when probably I've sit on the book that's been finished for a long time and I've edited and I drafted it to the point where I cannot contribute anything. Right. And it helps, and it in the grand scheme of things, if it's a series, then the work lays in the next book. Mm-hmm. So I think that's the answer I would give.
On the other end of that, what is writer's block? What have you experienced? Like, what is writer's block?
Okay, so because
we use it in all aspects of life, people like whatever you're doing.
Artist block.
But people say writer's block, but it originally stems from this writing.
Yes.
Yes. So what is it for you?
So there are multiple opinions, many, dozens, hundreds, from both classical authors and existing writers about what the actual writer's block, what it is. What is the actual writer's block? I've had so many writer's blocks because I again, not to give everything away, but I've had a lot of experience with writing blocks. Mm-hmm. To me, writing block is when you absolutely cannot write a scene. Like you don't see a scene, you cannot put anything down, even if you're suffering in the moment, you're in pain, just like Hemingway said, there's nothing to writing, you just bleed. Even if I bleed and I cannot write anything down, that's officially a writer's block. I have a lot to say on writer's block. If we have
Keep
time.
going.
Okay.
2 minutes.
Okay.
Keep it to 2 minutes.
So the way you deal with writer's block is that you first of all have to understand yourself and you have to ask yourself the question, why? There are multiple opinions. I know writers who I respect a lot, they're part of the workshop, who don't believe in writer's block at all. They say like, you have a word block.
Word block, okay.
It's not a writer's block. You have a word block, just you should do something else. You should draw, you should write one word, just like Hemingway says, just write one true sentence first. Forget about the big story. Stop asking questions. Other writers say, like, stop asking questions. There's an opinion that the reason why you have a writer's block is because you're stuck, you're still clinging to an idea that doesn't work anymore.
Mm-hmm. Almost like what you said earlier, wanting something, time passes.
Yes.
Do you still want that? Like how do you keep the continuum of that original thought, all this time spent building out characters, building worlds, getting lost in that maybe? How am I still telling the story?
And that's the question of consistency, which we'll dive in a bit.
Okay, perfect. Free world capital, human capital, AI. We didn't talk about any of that yet, but human experience, we go through blocks, creativity. It's not endless. It is endless, but sometimes our access to it gets stalled. So you're talking about word block versus writer block versus writer's block. What did you learn about yourself in overcoming writer's block, and what did you learn in yourself by the things that you still experience that are obstacles?
So Many questions. I will try to answer all of them. So
I keep them coming.
So first of all, big shout out to a friend of mine who's also a writer, Ian Price. That I don't want to take credit for something that's not my line. It's not my writing, right? It was him who said, "You don't have writer's block, you have word block." So go check out his Instagram, Ian Price. He's releasing a book this year, so we're really excited.
Awesome.
Now, so the struggle and what I've learned, right? So the biggest struggle was writing consistently, and that relates to the writer's block, what we talked about. So the writer's block for me, and again, I feel naked and exposed, like giving up my own, thing. My biggest struggle was writing consistently, because sometimes life happens, right? People think, oh, you can write a novel in a year or like in a month. Sometimes that happens, but sometimes you need time to write because, first of all, if you want to invest into quality, right? Each scene, if you want to have, like, just like Brandon Sanderson says in one of his lectures, you want to write each chapter in a way that it's going to be someone's favorite chapter. So I like that a lot. And so in order to do that, writing a whole book is a marathon. And sometimes the consistency is a whole thing. Sometimes you're like, am I a writer at all? Like if sometimes it's like not even a day or two, sometimes it's weeks, sometimes it's months. The longest writer blog I had was, 4 months.
Okay.
In that time, I was like, I'm not a writer. I'm just lying to myself. But in that, what I've learned is that in the background, your unconscious is working on it. So trust yourself. That's number one thing that I would say. Like if you ever stumble upon a block of some sort, even if it's business, if it's art, if it's writing, doesn't matter. Trust yourself. Be patient. I know everyone says that, but there are a couple of things I've learned on the way. So if you have a writer's block, number one thing you want to try is novelty, right? There's this perception that because of the classic authors, right, and big legends, big names of the past, that you have to be isolated. And that was partially my mistake. I thought, okay, I need to, structure my writing in such a way that, I have place, I have clear my schedule and I write. And you cannot plan inspiration. That's what I discovered. You cannot plan inspiration. The way to get inspired is to trigger your unconscious with novelty. Try new stuff, new scents, new smells, new sceneries, travel. If you cannot travel, go to a spot in your city, in your town that you haven't been before. I promise you, if you spend time on aimless walks and you just be present and you discover something new, that is going to help you. So, touch more things, right? I had this encounter. I remember, I will never forget that. I have a friend, a writer at the workshop. Her name is Rebecca Hudson. Really excited for her novel to come out in the future. I remember we're in the library after the workshop, after our read and critique, and she looked at me, and I don't remember how the conversation started, but she was like, "Stas, what's wrong with you? Like, you don't like to touch things?" I'm like, "What?" And I thought it was a language barrier. I was like, "What do you mean?" It's like, "But touching things, like, don't you care?" I'm like, "No." I was like, my first answer, my default answer was like, "I'm from Eastern Europe. We don't care about that thing." Like, I was like, "Is this an American thing?" I look around. I was like asking other writers, like, "Is this an American thing?"
It's so touchy-feely.
Yeah, like, oh, touch things. Like, I was like, and she's like, goes ahead and she touches the table, touches the books. And I'm like, what is wrong? I walked out that evening. I was like, this is weird. With time, I thought, oh, yeah. When you sense more things, when you experience new things, the way to trigger unconscious is through sensory. Because back to dreams, the way dreams work, they are the result, the imagery of your unprocessed sensory input of the day. So if you start having dreams, that's a good sign you're about to be creative. So that's number one thing, trying novelty. Another thing is just breaking your own patterns, trying of writing in a different way. I one time I wrote just a satire, like just made up characters, some philosophical dialogue with a vampire and a sexy fairy, and they have this in I just didn't take it too seriously. I just let it go. I read it at the workshop. Everyone was laughing so hard. I had to stop reading because I was laughing so hard. And I was told this is one of my best writings ever. Ironically, that's how it happens. And I'm still learning how to adjust to that because before I started writing, I wasn't functioning that way. I was a very structured person. I have background in data science, right? And economics, engineering, computers, and all that. So yeah, that was one of the things of writing consistently and just, taking time. If you like who you think you are to be inspired all the time, who you think you are to be inspired all the time. That's what I tell myself. Right. So, but at the same time, if you want to make this a career, you need to be consistent. So you need to clear your schedule, but at the same time, be flexible. So another trick I've learned that helped me a lot is get a timer, 1 hour. You put yourself on a timer for 60 minutes. Doesn't matter what you do. You write a song, if you're writing music, if you're writing a novel, if you're in business, whatever. Get a timer. And if you cannot get into the flow state within that constraint, which is another thing that helps, is putting yourself into a constraint.
Having limits.
Yes. Because if you have endless freedom, you are like, it's like a
choice
dilemma, right?
Overwhelmed, anxiety starts. What am I going to do?
Paradox of choice. So if you put yourself in constraint, if you can get into the flow state for 60 minutes in that 60-minute period, then perfect. Keep writing. That's a sign you're good. So relieve yourself. Don't start questioning yourself like, am I inspired or not? If you can't, always have another thing to do that is related to writing. Draw, produce like music, like do the world building, whatever that might be that may not even end up in your album, in your business, in your novel. So that's another thing that I would suggest. And my last struggle was the language, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
You said Eastern Europe. So yeah, what's the culture you come from? Not everybody in America or authors or anybody like kind of understands one, let alone the language barrier. Yeah. So when I think about speaking or writing, it's going to be in English unless I speak Spanish. But you said you speak, more than one language, and English is your third language. That's what you said?
Yes, I speak Ukrainian and Russian fluently. I grew up.
So yeah, where'd you grow up? Yeah,
Kyiv, Ukraine. So that's where I'm from.
And so when you first started writing, what language was it in? So
I wrote my first novel in Ukrainian. So the whole struggle with language looked like this. This is really what happened. I'm not going to pretend that I'm too professional. This is what happened. I got to the writer's workshop. I tried to translate my first chapters. I read them, and everyone said, "You write like Jane Austen from 200 years ago." And I'm like, what? And then I realized that blew my mind when I realized it. If you translate, Ukrainian or Russian into English, the way it's written as a piece of literary work, you're going to make native English speakers think that you're from 200 years ago. So, and that was my big problem. One of the initial critiques that I got was this is an old language, right? Like try writing something contemporary. And that's what I had to learn. It took me a whole year to switch to writing fiction in English because I've been in the US for 10 years before I started writing. I wrote academic essays, corporate emails. I was fluent. But when I started writing in English, I was like, I couldn't do it for like a couple of days because I realized Like this is totally different animal. And what I had to learn is to feel in English and imagine in English.
And so prior to that, you were feeling and imagining everything in.
Yes. Yes. And that was the big discovery that I realized that my native languages are complicated.
Yeah.
They are much more complex and they are more multi-granular in how you can express the exact same thing.
Right.
I'm sure that
Do you have one example that might help us? Like,
I probably want to give you an example because it's a different writing style. And those who are bilingual or trilingual will understand what I'm talking about. Like if you speak in your native languages, Chinese, Russian, maybe, French, but it's Latin, so it's a little bit simpler. But for example, if you're from China, Korea,
Slavic
Japan,
languages,
Slavic languages, Turkish, Arabic, Hebrew, English sounds like a kindergarten language. Like that's what I thought. I was so angry. Like I walked out, I was like, what?
What do you mean my shit sounds like 200 years ago?
Yeah, like try writing something contemporary. So I realized.
Try to remember, sometimes people are stupid, bro. Some people are just stupid.
I mean, I don't. So, but the thing is,
No
it was a common occurrence, right? So a lot of people said that. So it was really convoluted because the way I grew up with 3 languages at the same time. Even though Ukrainian and Russian are my native languages, it's like even my mom once told me she read a piece and she's like, it's so interesting to observe that the way you structure sentences, you could see you grew up with 3 languages. Because I punctuate in Ukrainian because we learned Ukrainian in school. I spoke Russian, but we didn't learn Russian as a language in Ukrainian school. So I spoke Russian, I wrote in Ukrainian, and I came to America and I learned to actually write stories in English. And it's all intertwined. And she could even pick up this sentence is a trilingual sentence. And she pointed out even before, so hats off to her, she pointed it out even before the workshop people did. So I had to adjust to that, and I'm still adjusting. Like sometimes other writers say it's not an issue anymore. But sometimes one sentence like that would slip, but sometimes they say, oh, it's part of your charm. Sometimes I get insecure about that. I'm like, oh my God, I'm so worried that this is gonna.
What makes you different as an author is how I grew up speaking and how I grew up writing and how I write now. And it's almost like you have to translate it from, and you've learned how to do this, but you're almost translating it from Ukrainian into English and then reinterpreting that English into English fiction literature. So there's so many layers there. Do you think having all the different languages, growing up and trying to figure out who you are and self-explore, do you feel like you had to push deeper because there was so much inability to express yourself to people in a way they would understand simply because of that diverse background in the language and culture?
So back to fantasy, Tolkien is known for inventing languages, right? Even Martin invented language. It's a whole deal because of Tolkien. He's the father of fantasy. And when I was a kid, I didn't understand that. Oh, okay, he invented a whole language for elves, language of Mordor, the Ring. Well, I did not appreciate that at the time, even though I loved Lord of the Rings. Today, because I'm a trilingual, and also I learned French before I learned English. So I forgot most of French. I studied French for 10 years in Ukrainian. I was in French school.
Before you spoke English?
So we started learning French in 1st grade and English in the 2nd grade.
Wow.
Yeah. So, but it's not important. What's important is the language is so important that I think writing is powerful because of that. And I think back to the perception. I think how you encapsulate that through the language. And I think we don't talk about the language enough. And seeing the differences in languages, not just oh, it's a culture thing. It can, if you dig deep and go down the language rabbit hole, you can have so many insights about how different societies, here in America versus, back in Eastern, in Europe, in Asia and East Asia, the language reflects that. The way you express yourself relates back to how you think. You kind of like reprogram yourself through language. And part of my journey was back to the identity issue, right? Like, am I American? Am I Ukrainian? My native tongue is Russian. Who am I? Right? So it was a big struggle in that way, because one of the things that I explore in the language, and this is deeply personal, I was going back and forth between Ukraine and America because it still felt like home. I left my nest, right, when I was 15, and it was like I already had some roots there. I still have friends in Kyiv at this time, as of today, who I speak almost daily, right? And so I would go back. Other immigrants, and I think this is what's different, not for me as a writer, but as a person. Majority of immigrants immigrate and they stay, they sell everything, and just one-way ticket, right? For me, it was different. I had to go back. Not I had to, but I wanted to go back, and I did for 10 years, like every summer when I was in school, and then during the winter break, whatever, and then back when after I was in school. And so every time I would come back, I realized, wow, I've changed so much. I no longer feel like I 100% identify with what's there. It's like you coming back. I don't remember who said this quote, but coming back to a place that hasn't changed is huge, because you realize how much you did. And that triggers a lot of melancholy. It's dark. And
what triggers that for you?
So going back, like if I were to go to Ukraine right now, I wouldn't feel probably a thing, because I had to detach myself. I still care about what's going on. It's probably, we're not going to go deep into the current events, right? So I support my homies. I earn, but I had to develop this detachment, not just because of the war, but because I moved. It took me 10 years to realize, they say you spend 5 years in prison. I'm not saying America's prison. America's a wonderful country. I'm just saying, like they say, one of the things I was told when I moved here by, another immigrant who's been here, for years, is like, well, wait for 5 years. It's like in prison, you're going to adjust here. It's going to be your home now. It wasn't like that for 10 years, not just 5.
You almost kept going. You had multiple ties.
Yes.
It's almost like detaching in order to,
yes.
How can I be present and happy where
yes.
I'm at? You almost had to let go. And you're, going to school, young. That's not something that's easy to move across countries. All the language barriers, moving countries, like, trying to express yourself to people who grew up in America. When you're growing up, you're 14 to 23, you're trying to figure out who you are, trying to speak. All these things are happening, and you still go back. It still feels like home. America's not home. So
and then what happened is when I moved on my own, right? And after 10 years, what happened was I assimilated. There was a moment where I'm like, oh my God, I'm not yearning anymore to go back every day. And this is my home now, and it felt so good. But for 10 years, I had this like absolutely shattered, I won't say personality, but my feelings, what I care about, right? So it's just like
couldn't act on the things you cared about because you were in another country.
For months
from your people, friends, your whole life, the things you wanted and yearned for, and you the reason you left was for whatever reason, but like you're on the path to pursue a better life, and it's like you have to let go of that to get there.
That opened the door to a lot of psychological questions. Why, right? And so a lot of things I explore is the duality of things in my writing, and this is hard to talk about. So it was kind of like living a double life. For me, it was like having a different life in different places that are across the world. And that, that impacted me a lot. And so I those who listen to this podcast and those who are actually going to read at least one of my books, start to finish, they probably gonna pick up on that in one way or another, even if it has nothing to do with travel.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that was a big part, and that's why I started writing to kind of explore that, because I had to channel this suffering in one way or another. I'm over it now. It's so crazy because sometimes I go for months not speaking my native languages, and all my friends are American, and everyone who I talk to is American, such as yourself.
Yeah.
So that was. Yeah, that was.
I can say
struggle.
That's a struggle and a success, that in and of itself.
Yeah.
And I'm happy for you that you found that home way away from where you're born, but you found it. And I can tell, just talking to you for years, you've gotten this level of comfort with yourself that I haven't experienced before. Your hair has grown out. You got the style. Like, dude, like you're coming into like your own, and you've made a really bold decision. We didn't even talk about it, but you left a whole career.
Yeah.
Well-paying, good career, good school, everything to go pursue this dream. Literally started with a dream. That
I had a dream.
Yeah. Like, dude, that's something. If 1% of people become writers and a smaller percentage become authors or like published, dude, what percentage of people really go out, walk away from a good career logically that makes sense on paper to go pursue their passion? Like, you are a living example of that.
Yeah.
What was that like?
So a little bit of background, but not oversaturated. By trade, I'm a data scientist. And I've achieved a substantial, humble success in that. So that's one of the reasons I moved. We went to school in DC, right? I moved to Texas, and I'm not gonna lie, I made good money, right? So, I wish I could say, well, I struggled a lot. I was born in poverty. Kind of, yes, if you think about it, because I was in Ukraine, right? Like, if for $10 you can have a king, you can be a king for an entire day there in Kyiv at that time, like even 10 years ago, right? So I was able to compare some things, right? At the same time, it was a big decision to switch. Again, I don't want to like jinx it, as we say in Ukrainian, Russian. Я не хочу каркать. I don't want to karkar. I don't want to be a bird who sings these songs, and it's but in a way, it was a big decision, because I remember this. It was more than 2 years ago. I realized I cannot do this.
Yeah.
I loved analysis. I loved data science. But 9 to 5 was killing me. I remember going into the office. We moved office in the company I worked for. And we moved into an office that was a former call center. It would like literally booths. Like when you see movies, when you watch movies and they have this like archetype of like boring, depressing job and at the booth, that's where I worked. And I didn't give it a thought for the first time. I was like, oh, it's novelty, right? Like, oh, I moved to a new office. It's pretty cool. In a month, holy shit. Like my fault, I didn't watch Matrix until last year.
Oh yeah.
I didn't, it's one of the beauties is like some of the movies you don't watch, everyone's like, watch this, and that's how I felt. Because it's the same thing over and over again, and I can go into deep research and I've read a lot of books, that are nonfiction that show that's not how humans were developing, right? This monotonous work for 8 hours does not fit us, which is a whole different topic of conversation. But I got so depressed that I was like, I don't know what I'm gonna do to myself if I continue this. And so it was a struggle because for 2 years I forbid myself to buy a coffee at Starbucks. I saved money aggressively. I do, and again, I don't know what's gonna happen this year. Like I don't know what's gonna happen next year. I don't know what's gonna happen. I don't know. We may have this podcast and it's all been just an illusion. Who knows? But I made that decision because I'm still young. I want to try it. I want to do it. I've collected a lot of feedback that this may be a thing. So it's not just I'm not delusional.
Yeah.
People like my writing. Agents want me to query them. They like the pitch. So yeah, I just hope to keep writing and finish. One of the biggest fears that I have is that I don't finish my work before I die. Even if it's like just one book I release, but it's like a part of the series or something like that, that I don't finish the books.
Right. Well,
So
if people wanted to support you, if we wanted to support you, if we wanted to read something you've written, any language, anything, where could we get access to that? Maybe it's not a full published novel with a hard book, but if we want to support you and read something that you've written, is there anywhere?
I'll be making announcements on my social media.
Okay. Awesome. I mean, dude, I support people who go out and pursue what motivates them. Like, so you're going to make some announcements about where people could potentially maybe read something. Like, have you thought about making a Substack? Have you thought about putting out maybe non-fiction literature or just anything?
I don't want to mislead my audience because I sometimes write philosophy as a side hustle. Not a hustle, but
just a passion.
Yeah, just like sometimes
training for a marathon. Like you might not run a marathon every time,
Yeah.
but you're gonna do certain kinds of things.
Yeah, I just don't
Other
want
kinds
to.
of writing that you might train.
Yeah, I
yourself
don't want to
for.
mislead that. For example, oh, he's a philosopher, but actually, my main writing is fantasy. So,
Okay.
I may, just have a small announcements like, hey, my main project is not finished. You can read this. I don't know what's gonna happen, but definitely, when the book is released, you'll hear about it on my socials.
Awesome. And then I just have a few things that I like to ask.
Let's dive into it. I know you've been burning to ask me some
I've been-
not writing related
No,
questions.
my fire is lit right now.
Let's go.
It's alive. Speaking of alive, like what makes you feel alive? I see processing and images flying through your head right
Yes.
now. Like I see a whole dream world happening right now.
I don't think it's just one thing. People with whom I can have a deep conversation, that makes me feel alive. Even if we don't agree on anything, but again, I'm from Eastern Europe. I don't want to identify myself as, I'm Eastern European because I'm not. In that way, I don't see that as myself anymore.
Today, yeah.
Yeah. But we just hate small talk. If you ever met anyone, any Slavic person who's just fresh to the Western world, they're like, they hate small talk. And so I like deep, serious things to talk about. And when I find a person just like as yourself, to talk about things that are below the surface level of things that we see,
Deeper than the surface level. Yeah.
yes, patterns, any insights into just human existence or just some practical stuff. I'm not gonna say like, oh, I'm this illusionist who's writing fiction and philosophy only. Like I'm also into practical stuff as well. Right. So sharing experiences, just feeling things. Feeling, again, traveling just makes me feel alive. What also makes me feel alive, not going to lie, having a successful writing session, that pumps me out. I was like, okay, I completed a chapter. I think it's good. That just, oh my God. Like sometimes, especially after the writer's block, I'm telling you, it's just, you can think whatever you want about me. Like if you had a writer's block for 4 months and then you complete a chapter in like a 10-hour session or whatever, and you just get out of that writer's block, you feel inspired again, it's as good as sex. I promise you. I promise you, if you're an artistic person, you know exactly what I'm talking about.
Right.
So, still got that fire. You know what they say?
Okay. Last couple of questions. You talked about like anything, exploring deep conversations in the human experience. Like I like to ask everybody this question. Like, what does it mean to you to be human?
That's a deep question. One may just write a book trying to answer it. To me, if I were simple, I would say feeling the range of emotions, reflecting upon time. I'm not going to go too deep into like what separates us from animals, although certainly a lot of major philosophers dived into that question. But reflecting, looking back, reflecting through time, I think that is in essence what it means to be human to me. To me, time is the only God. I'm not trying to bestow my views on faith to anyone. I'm not trying to prove anything. I'm not also being careful not to overwhelm my writing with that. Although, if you watch till this, I'm not raising this question in every chapter. It's just like fantasy. That's the beauty of fantasy. You can, you world build in, some of the nations or, countries or kingdoms in your
adopt different
they can have
ideologies.
like different religions and all that. So I like playing with that. But it's just one tiny aspect of world building and writing in itself. But to me, just thinking about past, present, future, I've read books about the philosophy of time in itself, not just philosophy of time. I'm still even processing what I read. I'm rereading, I'm studying that because it's so hard to talk about. I'm not going to go in, too formal into that. But just a simple experience of I was a different person a year ago. Mm-hmm. That to me is a mind-blowing thing. Realizing that some things don't change. There are constants in our, I've encountered without going too deep into it, I've encountered experiences, human experiences, overwhelmed with emotion where some things don't change in a segment of time that can last a long time, years, different stages of your life. There are some constants, right? But sometimes they break and you realize, oh, everything's changing. You have no constants, right? And just pondering upon time just is a really humbling experience, but it's also very personal because every person has memories. The reason why you had those memories is because in that moment you experience a strong, strong emotion. I wrote a whole essay about how memory as a part of consciousness and knowledge is directly related to emotion. They're intertwined. It's two different spheres of knowledge, and human understanding and just experience of being human. So, yeah, I would say
read that.
Yeah, I would say emotion, memories, time. That's a big part of me. That's what I think makes a human. I don't think I mean, I don't know. I would love to be in a dog's head or like in a cat's head or in a horse's head. And just like, do they think about their childhood? Like, do they like, oh my God, I was a puppy, you know, like, or I was a kitten, you know, I was so naive. Like, I'm wondering if they actually have that
Cats
stuff.
like cry thinking about how they're not a kitten anymore. Like, when did I grow old?
Yeah.
What does it mean? But last question. Through all that experience of time and the changes and the constants, what is one piece of advice that you'd give to yourself if you were to start your whole journey all over today that someone else who might be listening could use to help them in their journey?
Right. You may not be published. This may all just be one giant illusion. It may matter, it may not matter, but it will help you. That is my message. I think, because just being able to articulate thoughts and feelings of your own, just by journaling, you'll learn yourself. You become a better human being. You become a better friend, a better parent, a better child, you know, son or daughter, a better lover, a better husband or wife. I truly believe in that. Or a better, if you're a businessman or you know, whoever, it's going to help you. One of the things I would tell myself specifically would be enjoy the early stages of writing, because there's a sweet spot of naivete when you think this is awesome, which is completely wrong. Like as Hemingway said, every draft of everything is shit. And I believe in that, because you realize the magic is in the rewriting. Like, no matter what you write, a song, a script, you realize through time, you come back to this same song, same business idea, same philosophy, same novel, and you write it better. It becomes more complete. It's deeper with layers. It hits better. It inspires more. There was a time when, I was just my first chapters. I remember exact place, exact time of the day, the dates when I wrote my first 5 chapters back years ago. That was a wonderful feeling, because I did not know what I'm getting into. And it's beautiful. And there's this, you have zero pressure, because you just want to get this out. Now, although I'm trying to both accept and fight it, because I'm trying to make a living out of it, you have this pressure, like, oh, it's either this or you don't have a job, like, or you're on the streets, right? So, but there's an early stage. So if you're just discovering this, if you're just listening to this, I promise you, you will be successful, and there will be more pressure, right? If you're in the early stages of writing or whatever you're trying to do, enjoy this, and write as much as possible, right? If you're able to finish projects consistently, and you're looking in the mirror and you're like, yes, I'm a writer, I'm an entrepreneur, I'm an artist. If you're able to finish projects and you have that grit of finishing a draft, a song, a novel, you've proven that to yourself, don't stress about it. Still enjoy that novelty, because it's going to pass away, and you will be telling stories. Oh, I started writing years and years ago, right? No matter if you're published or not. The other thing I would say, it's kind of a double-edged sword, because on one hand, you want to experience this firsthand, the initial inspiration, the first awakening as an artist. So enjoy, and I would say that produce as much as possible without thinking of the pressure. That is the sweet spot.
Yeah.
If you're just in your first year of writing or your business, that pressure you're feeling is going to double next year and triple in 3 years from now. You're gonna be successful, and you're going to keep feeling this pressure. So pressure is not going away. If you're just starting, that's the huge opportunity psychologically to feel as little pressure as possible, because you're just starting. You're just like, oh, I'm gonna try this out. I'm gonna try writing a novel. That is the unlock to writing your first novel. That is the sweet spot. That is the key in the early stages to enjoy, through enjoyment and through fantasizing, I would say, to produce as much writing as possible, to build as many business ideas as possible. Because I think I wish I knew that back then, years ago, when I just started. I would have this fake pressure that wasn't, I would still feel like the Kruger effect, where like you still feel this naivete. You're a novice and you're just starting. You feel you got the world. You're writing a bestseller. You're a genius. Oh, I got this. There's still that, but there's also this like worry, right? The problem with that is in itself is a block, or maybe you're just, that whatever fake pressure there is, it's stopping you from producing not just one book, but two, or not one business, two businesses.
Right.
You're gonna hit that success when it's like, oh shit, this is serious.
Yeah.
And it's going to
I have to deliver.
You have to deliver now, right? So you're past that stage, right? And in that stage, whatever you accumulated, that stage is critical, because the more you have accumulated, the more foundation you have. Even if you just learn a little bit of craft or a little bit of your business rules or whatever you're trying to do, right? The more content, the more things that you have is going to be your foundation. You can play with it and use it later on, because it's going to get hard, and it's in the journey in itself. It depends on how consistent you are and how much you want it. So,
right. Well, dude, we want to hear more from you. Love you, bro. I told you this earlier today.
Yeah.
Not only am I saying that from me to you, but also like keep loving you. You know what I mean?
I do.
I do too, bro. Love you too, bro. All right. That's all we have for now. We're about to go enjoy ourselves in California.
Yeah.
Thank you for coming out here.
Thank you for having me.
Dude, this is my first show back in California that was like planned out with a guest that I like brought in. So there's no pressure right now. I'm going to take your advice and just keep running with it. This has really been awesome, dude.
Thank you.
Thank you, bro.